In this lesson, I'm going to move forward and demonstrate how to configure and create code for each one of our products within our modal that we're creating. So in the previous lesson, we created the details modal and we created various PHP files. So I'm going to create code for one of the PHP files, and of course, once it's created, the structure is created, we can copy it for the rest of the products as well, change the names and so on. So let's begin with our Levi's jeans. And by the way, before I begin, let's navigate to our site so I can show you by refreshing that all we did so far is created the featured products, configured the footer, and so on. So at this point, when I click on the details for the watch, for instance, nothing happened. So we'll be configuring a modal pop-up box that's going to show me additional details about the watch when I click on detail. Great. So let's go to our code. From our left, let's click on the Levi's jeans.php. So here, let's start with our class. My first div class is modal, fade details, and -1. The ID in this instance is details -1. My table index is going to be -1. The role, I'm going to say it's dialog, and then specify the area, which is accessible rich internet, and that's Bootstrap. So here I'm going to specify the area dash label by equals my details -1, and then also specify a hidden property. So area dash hidden, ARIA, and I'm going to set this to true. Okay, great. Next, specify another div class, and this time I'm going to call it modal dash dialog and call it modal dash LG. So this is our dialog box that's going to pop up. Also create a header div class. I'm going to call it modal dash header. And next, of course, cannot forget our button, because once the pop-up comes up, we need a button, right? So just specify a button class. I'm going to call it close. Type is going to be button, and use the data dismiss equals modal, and specify the area dash label and call it close. All right, great. So right after the button, I'm going to use the span tag, area dash hidden true, and specify at times semicolon, and then close my span tag. Okay, so this goes within my button class. All right, next I'm going to place a heading, maybe heading 3 or maybe a little smaller. Go with heading 4 class, and this is going to be our modal title, and the text is going to be in the center, and I'm going to call it Levi's jeans and close our heading. So here's my first div, is the header for our modal. And one thing I want to add up here, okay, is right after my modal header, or prior to this, I'm going to use another div class to place the content. Okay, div class, and this is going to be our modal content. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 divs here, and then of course I need to close and make sure I have my 4th div. Okay, so that way we don't make mistakes as our code increases. Okay, so we're going to make sure that if you have 4 divs open, then you need to have 4 divs closed. Okay, so the first div that we created was the button, and next let's continue on and create some more div classes for our body and maybe the container. So div class equals modal body, and then create some rows for this. Div class equals row, or before the row, let's create the container fluid, right? We're going to make it container dash fluid, and this is also Bootstrap, by the way. And then do the row. So we have the body, we created the container, we created the row, and of course specify our column as well. So div class, this is going to be column colsm6 for instance, and then the placement. Okay, so let's say div class, I'm going to call it center block. All right, so we have the body, the container, the row, column, the center, and then our image, right? Because once the pop-up comes up, we also need to specify the image source for this, and this is going to come from our images folder. I'm going to call it levis.jpg. Give it some alt text, call it Levi's jeans, give it a class here, and call it details image is going to be responsive. Close my image tag. One too many. Alright, so we placed our image. Next, I'm going to close this div tag for my image, and then the following div tag also for my column6 class. Next, let's create another column here. So column div class, and this is going to be column sm-6, referring to the same column one more time, and then my headings. So start with h4 for instance, and call it details. Right after my heading 4, add some text also. So just a new paragraph, and I'm going to call it these jeans. Just type some text. These jeans are amazing. You must try them and buy them. Get them while they last. Okay, something like that. And then close our paragraph tag. Alright, great. So here's some text. Then I'm going to do the HR, and next specify the prices also. So under a new paragraph, for instance, I'm going to say price equals $24.99. I think that was the price for our jeans. Close our p tag, and the next, of course, our brand. It's going to be Levi's also. Brand is Levi's. Okay. So far we created the containers, columns, specified the row, the block, the source of the image, and some text that we wanted to display on this particular modal. Next, continuing on, we are going to create the same for the rest of the products. So let's make sure our tags are closed properly, since I've been closing them manually. So we don't need these anymore. Great. All right, recheck our code, make sure we have everything correctly done. And you scroll up. This is where we started. We created a div class, gave it details-1, specified the area. Scroll down, make it a little smaller so we can see, or in fact, let me resize this part and then make it bigger so you can see. Okay. All right, we gave a div class for modal dialog, modal LG, for instance. Then the content, our header, specified the button, and our span area, true. Okay, I need to close the tag here for my span, and then use the @times colon. Great. And the good thing about, again, these editors is because of the color coding, right? So you can take a look at, and as you get more experience and writing code, you get comfortable with the color schemes and the code as well. So we have the span corrected, and then my Levi's jeans, the body, container, and this should be rather the opposite way, so it closes the H class, and now we have our tag corrected. Perfect. All right, then the body, fluid, row, columns, this looks good so far. Our image source is good, our paragraphs are okay, and then our div tags are closed. So my last div tag goes to my first div tag, my second div tag goes to my second last div tag, and so on. Okay, so just to recheck our code before we save and actually see it, it's a good idea to do this early on, so that way you'll have few errors, if any. So let's save this and test it out and see what happens. Okay, so let's navigate to our site, refresh. Great, where's my Levi's jeans? Right here. So at this point, if I click on details, a nice modal pop-up comes up, shows me the image, placement, my title, the details of the product. These jeans are amazing, you must try them and buy them and get them while they last, and then the price and the brand. A couple of things I don't see is the button. I don't see a button here that we created, and of course a title, some text that we need to capitalize. Let's go back to our code. So here's my title first, so I need to make sure it's capital L. And let's navigate to our button here. So my button class is close, and of course the type is button. Alright, this is good so far. So this close button, by the way, is the close for the dialog box. Okay, so it's not the button that we'll be creating. So we'll create that next. I'm going to demonstrate that. In fact, I'm going to create that for you so we can have an actual button on the modal that says close or add to cart or whatever. Okay, but for right now, this close in fact closes our modal. So if I click on details, it's right here. Okay, so it's the X button is the close button that we created. We are going to create a button here also. So I'm going to show you how to create a button here, so that when users want to click this button to close this modal, they can do so from here as well. Great. So let's go back to our code and let's scroll down. So right after my brand Levi's, I'm going to use the form function and call it form action, and this is going to say, let's say, add to cart. I'm going to again create a couple of things here, right? So add to cart as well, and then of course the other button. First, the form action is going to be for the add cart.php. This is the file I'm going to refer to, and the method I'm going to use is the post. Okay, so that's my first form action. Next, do another div class, and I'm going to refer this to my form group, and then specify my column also using div class. So here's column XS3, and then once I specify the column, and use the label. So the label, for example, quantity, is going to be the ID, which I'm going to refer to label, because once we're adding to the cart, you need the user to enter the quantity also, right? Not just select one or pick one, but you want to be able to have them use multiple products. If they want to buy more than 2 jeans, they can do so. So here's where the input function comes in, which prompts the user. So the input type equals text, and the class is the form control in this instance, and of course our ID must be given, same as quantity, and I can specify a name as well. Name equals quantity, and simply close my input tag. So once I've provided the input, my div tag is closed. So within this column XS3, I created the label and the input type. So maybe do another break, for instance, or I can insert a couple of breaks if I like, or just one. I'm going to leave it for one right now. If I need be, we can create others as well. All right, continue on. Let's create a div class here and refer to our form group and create a label and specify the sizes. Call it size. Next, I'm going to create the select, or use the select option, right? So users can select also. So it's going to be select name equals size, of course ID equals size, and class is going to be our form control. Form control, close the tag here, and on this form I'm going to specify certain options, right? So my first option value is going to be nothing for right now. We're going to add this later. My second option value. All right, my next option, or before I type my next option, bring this up so it's easier to copy, because we're going to create options for rest of the drop down products. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this and paste a couple of times here. So the reason why the first option value is blank, because when the user, for instance, clicks on the drop down arrow, the first field has to be blank, otherwise the number is going to be displayed in the first field. And you'll see in just a minute what I mean by this. Okay, the second option value, for instance, I'm going to give it 28 for this product, and say 28. The next will be 32 and 32, and maybe enter some more option values, and this time I'm going to say 36 and 36, and these are again just the different sizes of my Levi's jeans that I'm created. And then I have my select label closed.